All right, so let me switch to not that view. We're gonna go to this view. There we go. Hey, look at that. So, okay. I don't remember the name of this figure, but Ethan, so far I really like what you got going on with the color palette and everything. This like kind of neon sort of science fiction-y lighting is cool. A lot of the colors and like material values are working well, but there's a couple spots that I think we could fix a little bit. So I'm probably gonna I like to do this trick to give a idea of what's going on with like the values. Okay, so if we pull the color out, we can kind of take a look at like how the values of things are working together without the color information in it. And I think in general, like values are working quite well, particularly some of the areas like here, right? I think the hair also reads darker. Some of the like these elements they read like separate values, right? Where I think we can do a couple spots where it's maybe lacking or it's not quite so clear is like her shirt's supposed to be darker than her skin, okay? And if you look at this view like this, right, her shirt appears like almost the same as the skin, okay? So how we can adjust that is instead we want to not push the highlights quite so intense on the shirt. So what I would recommend is actually toning some of this down just a little bit so it's not quite so intense. And you can even darken some of these areas a little more. So we get a little more like navy blue in the shadows. Okay. And this will help to separate her shirt even more from the rest of the scene, right? We're trying to create like definition between her shirt and her skin, similar to how the like bandages, okay? So just like that, that's gonna, now if we, let's put this layer on top so we can turn it back on. All right, and we could come back to here. And now you can see like if I do this and this, like this helps her shirt read as like darker overall. Okay. All right, so next thing I would recommend. So this is really nice. You've got this like pinkish kind of material color here. But if we come down here, right, to the little stuffing in the teddy bear, okay, we don't have quite some of that color that I would expect to see in the teddy bear. So I would shift this to like a slightly more lilac-y kind of purple color. And I would try and get some of this color. Not that it needs to be darker, it just needs to be closer in color tone to what is happening in like with the environmental lights, all right? So something like this, and then coming up a little to slightly this more pinkish color, and just adjust this. So like the value hasn't changed, it still reads as like a white material, but it fits better into the color scheme overall. What's up? PhD, ADD, gone beyond one. Hello. Right, all right. So that's that. Now, all right, let's talk about her face a little bit. So we've got this really strong pink light, okay? And then you've got this blue light, and then you sort of have this like greenish light coming in from the side. And you get a little bit like right here on her face. But where I'm missing it is I don't quite see it like on her nose. So if you're going to do it, like, we need to try and get a little bit more like on some of the shape here, okay? And then we can pull it up like the side of her face just a touch. All right. So if we're going to do this like rim lighting effect, you have to be a little more like aggressive with it, but not so much that it's like crazy looking, okay? So here, right? And then we have it like it all shows up on the cloth and the hair. So let's up it a little bit, okay? So this needs to also appear like in anywhere this, because the goal of like these rim lights is to create silhouette, all right? And in order to create some silhouetting, we have to like push this a little bit more in some areas on the side so that it's a little more clear from this direction. So right now, I'm not getting like any of it down the side of her arm. This doesn't mean like paint a straight line. It should be like a softer transition. But if it shows up like here on her arms, for example, like it needs to show up more on the teddy bear so that it matches the same like effect, okay? So just make sure that it's consistently placed across the surface so that it all reads like the lighting direction is the same, okay? Because like here you've got it on the teddy bear's legs, but it doesn't show up enough. It's not quite enough to read consistently, okay? And like it works really well on her fingers to help silhouette some of this stuff. But let's just make sure that it's, if you can see it, you need to be able to see it anywhere from that same angle, all right? Okay. And then the last little kind of thing I want to talk about, sort of big thing, is here on her face. When you have the lighting direction coming in from this way, right? The problem you've got is that this, let's look at in black and white again. Right now, this shadow here and this shadow here are basically the same, but the lighting direction is coming in from the side, right? So we need to try and soften the midtones a little. So what I would do is I would grab this kind of like purplish midtone color that you've got. And then let's try and put some more light, a little bit more light on the side of her face that's facing towards the light. Okay. So we can enhance this a little bit. We can also create some tiny little shadow right here where the light's coming in from that direction. Okay. And even now you can see that that purple still looks quite dark. So I'm going to grab something that's like in between, something like this. And I'm going to build this up just a little bit. One, it's going to round her face out a little. And that'll make her appear like slightly younger. Right? Because it's like a more full face. Okay. And it also helps like create, makes it the two sides a little clearer. Right? So from before and after, you see it like fills out her face a little. Hello. And then the same thing with the neck here. So like the light comes in, right? Like have some of this light really like this, some of this light would catch a little more on her neck. Okay. Like this, and then this maybe would come up like slightly more. All right, something like that. And then we can kind of, this got a little too much, so soften a little bit. It's not like I'm not trying to create like a super hard cast shadow here, but there would be like a little bit more light on that side of her neck. All right. Hi, Nikki Minis. Hi. Greg Zog, hello, good morning. By the way, if it's cool, Ethan, makes sense. I think you correct some of those things and it'll help out quite a bit, right? Even up here on the hood a little, like try and have the light like a little more clear, that it's like coming in from this direction, okay? Don't like overdo the highlights and lose some of that shape, okay? Cool. All right. Well, let me switch cameras. So, if anybody's just joining us, we are doing Feedback Friday. So, in my Discord, if you are a Twitch sub, I have a channel in my Discord where you can post photos of your work in progresses or your finished figures, and I'm giving feedback on them. Yeah, so if you want to join the Discord, the link is in the about down below. And then, yeah, we're looking through this stuff. All right, Craig, you posted something, didn't you, Craig? Yeah, you posted this crazy Seaman, whatever you want to call it. So let's look at yours next. Okay, and I'll go through and I'll post the corrected like versions in the Discord also. So you have like the image version. You don't have to come back and like screen grab the stream. All right. So let's look at Craig's. No, wrong cam. This one. Let's go to this one. So I'm still on it, huh? Because I know you guys all want to see my beautiful face while I'm drawing on my iPad. Okay, so Crabby Man. I quite like how this one's going. Yeah, I think the theme and the color palette of the model is working quite well. This one's an interesting one because we can talk about like a few things in terms of like color balance. If you are in the Discord and you have linked your Twitch to Discord and you are a sub, you will get access to the Feedback Friday Discord channel. Okay, so there's some cool things to talk about, like color balance on this one, right? So you've got a bunch of, what are sort of the colors that we've got, right? If we simplified it down, there's like the pink, right? We've got pink, we've got kind of blue, right? That's another accent. And we've got this sort of yellow, okay? Well, this is, when talking in terms of color schemes, if I make these like really saturated, okay? Let's do this, pink. Then you've got this like bluish cyan kind of color. And then you have this pinkish color, which is more in the reds, but like we can kind of think of it like this sort of magenta color, right? You have this kind of triadic color palette going on, okay? Now, when you're dealing with these triadic palettes, we need to think about color balance a lot. So right now you've got, let's point at where like pink is. So we got pink here, we got pink here, we got it in kind of his skin, but his skin is quite neutral. So we have it sort of in the top and bottom, okay? He's got the little starfish right here, right? All right, so let's look at blue, okay? Blue, we have kind of here, we have it here, and then there's like some here and like a little that shows up in his shoulder and stuff, but it's like, right, it's like this right now. Okay, and then where's the yellow? Yellow, we've got here, got it sort of here, but not quite enough, and then we've got it like right here, okay? what we want to try and do is we want to try and balance these out a little more. So right now, these are sort of connected. The pink is sort of connected like top to bottom, and the blue is kind of connected left to right, right? Hi, Moon Shepherd. Hello, Joe Pocono. Okay, so let's see if we can think of some ways to balance these out a little more so that these colors kind of show up in more places, right, around the figure. Okay, so how can we play around with the blue? Where could we add blue, right? You've got a little here. Hi, Spilbo Baggins, thanks for the follow. Okay, let's up the blue just a little bit, something like this, right? Sure, I'm on a new layer. Okay, we can put we can intensify the blue in the eyeball a little. We can also try and you could try and filter a little bit stronger blue on the whatever shellfish thing this thing is. Okay. And then another interesting thing might be, instead of pink here, is do this as a blue starfish. Okay. So now instead of just this one spot, we've got this kind of connections going like this. So the blue kind of works as this triangular thing going on, okay? Where we've now connected these around the figure a little more, all right? So now we have this yellow-orange, but where could we enhance the yellow-orange a little, okay? If it's here and here, where else do we kind of need it? Right? If we do something like this, okay, this is going to help balance out these colors a little better. Okay, so what I would do is I would take this yellowish tone. I'm going to make this a color layer just so you can, yeah, let's make it like a color dodge or something just so I can show. Okay, so I want to, is that not what I wanted? Oh, I turned the opacity all the way down. All right, what kind of layer type do I want here? Hard light, is that it? Yeah, this will work. Right, so what I would recommend is you glaze or some inks or something to enhance some of the saturation here with this bits of color. And then also on this guy, we can make this more interesting by kind of you sometimes see the shellfish with this sort of spiral patterning to them. Okay, so by using a bit more color on this guy and doing something like this, we can balance these colors a little more. And we can get this, get a little more of that color composition happening, right? So we've got now instead of just in these two sort of spots, we kind of tie this one in back together. All right. The last thing I would say is on his face, detail wise, this stuff's really good. The skin and stuff is really nice. You maybe want to do something with his buttons on his shirt, whether it's just change the color slightly, right? I don't know, something like that, just to bring out the detail a little more. On his face, I think we can introduce a little bit more color on his face. So same thing that we just kind of did, right? So just think about maybe increasing some of the saturation in some of these areas, just a touch. Okay. Right? So around his nose and on his cheeks. And you've kind of desaturated this a little bit, but I think we can pull it down even a little bit more so it matches with his beard a little more. Right. We can kind of pull out a little bit of the color down here. And then also, like, this is a tough one, but okay, so this is the thing about beards, right? You've base coated the beard with a dark color. Hey, Walter, thanks for the tier 1 for 3 months in advance. Appreciate that. Okay, so you have this dark shadow, right? That like separates the beard. If you want to make I can use myself as an example. Let's look at me. Hi, see? I don't have this like dark shadow line where the hair of my beard starts. It just becomes like, it just goes from skin to beard, right? So what we want to do is grab some of the skin tone, okay? And we want to try and soften this out, right? So what that means is that you want to try and kill some of this dark color here where the beard is like beginning, okay? My recommendation would be like to take a skin tone and just like take your skin tone and kind of paint like halfway over the beard like this, right? Something like that. And then you come back with the lighter hairs and you then paint over top of those, and you'll get this like much softer transition between the skin and the beard, right? And then we can pull that up a little bit more. Also consider bringing some of these hairs like out into some areas like this. Like maybe he's got like a few whiskers and stuff like growing on some of like the outer parts of his face, right? And he probably would also have like maybe just a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow kind of thing happening on his like mustache. All right, so this is another area where you can like kind of introduce some of that color tone. Okay. So something like that, right? Does that make sense? Is that helpful? This might actually be an interesting spot too to like change this little ball thing to blue. Something like this. That gives us another like spot that you can kind of use that blue color to connect it in the middle somewhere. All right, so I want to, can I put all these together in a layer group? So we can see the difference. Oh, all right, you're going to be a jerk. All right, so now we should be able to see sort of the difference before and after in terms of like color balance. I think you can color balance this guy a little better because everything is so desaturated and you don't have these like key color points to like draw attention around where you want. All right. Would I ever cut my beard? No. Why would I do that? No, I cut it from time to time. Okay. Cool. Makes sense. Glad. All right, switch back to this camera so I can pull. All right, we had, I think Jonas was in the thing in the feedback. So let's grab Jonas. I think I have yours saved already, actually. Yeah. All right. So I'd actually already given Jonas some tips on this lady, but I think we can go over a couple things. Number one thing, all right? First thing. What draws your attention the most on this model, chat? What is the one thing that is like just begging for attention? Is it the armor? I feel like it's also slightly more red than... Really? There's nothing in particular that stands out a lot. All right, so maybe Jonas did a little better than what I was thinking, but for me, it's this right here. Yeah, there we go. The hilt. The hilt of the sword is like screaming for attention because all of this part of the model is like kind of in the same sort of harmonious color palette, and the hilt is like bright red and yellow, and it just wants to draw your attention. Okay? So, my recommendation to you would be find somewhere else where you can use these sorts of colors, okay? Say, for example, instead of her belt buckles being all silver, what if we gave her the gold belt buckles? Okay, that's already helped balance the color out a little bit. All right. And then where can we use just a bit more of this red, right? Well, the hair has quite a bit of red in it. But I think we could even play a little more with the reddish tones in the face, okay? No, that's green. Okay, so if we intensify just some of the red a little bit here, it's going to help balance out that red gem with some of the other color tones, right? Now, the other question I would ask you is what's happening with the armor here, okay? The armor goes from this purplish tone to what? What color are we going through? You could say greenish, but this is quite yellow, right? It's getting quite yellow. Her skin also gets closer to yellow, right? But what happens to the hair? Okay, the hair starts here. Not an overlay. Okay, the hair starts with this sort of color tone, right? And then it goes to this. All right, and let's look at these two colors on the color picker, right? So we're in red, and then we're going this way, right? We're going closer to magenta. But we should be coming this way because the lights shift towards yellow, right? Let's look at the skin. We start in red, and we get warmer, and we get warmer, and we get warmer, right? We get more yellow, more yellowish orange. Same with the armor. The armor is going to start kind of cool, right? We're starting blue. Really, it's like purplish. Then we go kind of neutral gray through green, right? And then we come up to this like lime green, and then eventually yellow. Okay, so what I would recommend instead for the hair highlights, right, instead of this pinkish color, let's think about something slightly more orangish. Okay, like this, right? I'm just trying to do this fast. Obviously, like you would be more careful than this. Okay, and then lastly, then I would come in with like something like this guy, and then these final highlights in the hair would be slightly more on the yellowish side, okay? Want to be consistent with like the color of the lighting, okay? Also, that yellow, right? That yellow in the hair highlights is once again going to help balance out that yellow of the sword hilt, right? So think about what color your light is. If your light is affecting everything else by making it more warm and yellow, then it needs to affect the hair the same way. Okay, so let's look at like kind of before where the hair is. Right, let's turn this one off too. But kind of before, right, and then after, it starts to feel more consistent with the color of the lighting, right? Should we expect to see more of that magenta light in the armor? There isn't actually like a magenta light. He's got this like magenta midtone as like a really strong middle, and there is some in here, but yes, you probably could come in with something like this in some of these areas where you're using this like, oops, and just like in a few spots kind of like play around with some of this. There is some spots where you can see he's put some magenta in, like here. But yeah, it could maybe be like slightly stronger to help balance out. Okay, so something like that, right? If I didn't pull the gold into the buckles, what color would I recommend given the rest? So you could do steel and just make it a different steel tone. Like it doesn't have to be like brass, right? Steel hilts are pretty normal, right? Okay. Yeah, I would talk about the back, but I've already talked about the back with you, and you fixed some of the things that we had spoken of. Okay. All right. All right. Alder, you're in here. Let's look at yours. Okay, we're gonna look at this vampire. This Chimera Vampire Man. Okay. Happy Friday, indeed. Okay, so what are the big things I want to talk about? Okay, so first thing I'd like to talk about, yeah, so far I like where it's going, okay? However, we're going to talk about two things real quick that I think will help a lot. One is non-metallic shapes. When were people submitting all the? You can submit them right now. If you're a sub, you can submit in the Discord under the Feedback Friday channel. You have to link your Discord and Twitch account. Okay, we're going to talk about non-metallic shapes, okay, like reflection shapes. And then we're going to talk about like OSL and OSL color, all right? So let's talk about this sword, okay? So when you're doing non-metallic, all right, try and avoid what I would refer to as like laser beam reflections. Okay, these are laser beam reflections. All right, they look like little lightsabers reflecting in the surface. They're too thin. Okay, it's very easy. Like when you start to build up non-metallic, this is what happens. You go like you're building up the color. So you've done this, and then you take the next layer and you paint it inside that, right? And then you take the next layer up, which is like something like this, and you build it inside that, and then you grab the next layer and you've painted it so small, right, that you've now run out of space, okay? And you get these like little laser beam reflections. What I would recommend is you make your main two things. One, you only have one main reflection on any given surface, unless it's like got a serious S curve going on. You wouldn't have multiple reflection of the same intensity. Okay, so one thing here is like if we're gonna do this one, right? We're gonna choose this as the main reflection. Let's broaden this reflection. Okay, so let's make it bigger and softer. Right? Then we need to grab this like intermediate tone. I'm going to extend this a little. So I'm going to make this even larger. Right? And then here where you have the secondary one, this now becomes a secondary reflection. All right? Same with this one over here. And this one's probably too powerful. So let's tone this one down, soften it out. All right. So now you have one major reflection and these two like minor reflections. All right. Then we want to make sure we define the edge. And what's the last thing? One of the most important things about painting non-metallic is that you use maximum contrast on non-metallic. All right. So what is missing from the non-metallic right now? There's a particular tone that you don't have. Anybody can hit me with that one? Correct. There's no black. So what we got to do is we got to find some area where we can come in and utilize like push this contrast even more, and we can shift it into a little bit of black. Okay. Yeah. All right, and then we can do the same thing on this guy, right? So we want to create contrast here. Now, when you have two panels like this, you want to make sure to create contrast between them. So I'm going to use where the white is. I want this to be really high contrast between these two sections, okay? So I'm going to tone this way down. All right. What would this be reflecting over here? Okay, right now it's super blue, but like the sword, the lower part of the sword is going to reflect what? Hi, J. Rivask. Thank you. Or JR. I'm just going to go with JR. I don't know. Yeah, it would reflect the ground. And what color is the ground? It's like a slightly more neutral gray kind of color, right? And we even get into this like greenish and maybe even this like sandy color. So let's go with like this greenish kind of turquoisey thing, okay? So we would hit over here, right, where it's facing towards that kind of greenish ground. Instead of this bluish color, we can use some of that, like that greenish color, to reflect a little bit of the ground. And we can push up from there. And then back here, this is all right, but maybe a more neutral gray would work better instead of this like intense blue gray. Okay. To kind of give the impression of the rocks, right? Similar to what you've kind of done on the like part of the hilt here. Okay. But the big thing is just like avoid that like ultra high, those super thin like laser reflections, okay? So if we look at like kind of how it was before, right, where it's like these super sharp lines. Quick question: are Feedback Fridays saved to your YouTube? Yeah, I'll upload this to YouTube afterwards. And then the kind of where we're at now, right? So we've given like more shape, more contrast, and kind of affected the sort of environment better, right? Okay. So don't be too thin. Broaden those out a little and push your contrast. Fabulous Draugr, hello, thanks for following. Also Hunter Mao, thanks. All right. Flames. So flames are interesting because right now you have what looks kind of like candlelight. Okay, I'm gonna do something. All right, it's sort of like candlelight, but you're missing a key color. All right, we're gonna switch to this camera, and I'm gonna take something out, and we're going lights off. What color is my face? Orange. Yeah. So, two things about OSO. Yeah. One thing is that the actual source of the light needs to be the brightest thing. Okay? So that means your flame needs to be way brighter. All right? So we need to come in here and just like make this flame way more intense. Okay? Also, this is a personal taste thing. I hate the black edges to flames. I think they make no sense. You don't, unless it's sculpted smoke, like parts of flames should not be black. Okay? And we can add a little bit of like the intense orange back to it. Right? It's too cartoony looking to represent like realistic flames. Because once again, if I go like this, right, that flame is not black. It's like bright yellow, right? Bright yellow with a little bit of orange in it. Okay, and then we can come in and get this like super bright pale yellow like in between the fingers and stuff. Okay. And also the source of the flame is going to be the most intense part. So you kind of do it the reverse of how you would do most things. So that like the inside part is going to be the brightest, the absolute brightest part of the flame. Okay. So we kind of do something like that, right? And it looks sort of goofy at the moment because you don't have like the darker, you're missing those like darker parts of the flames, right? It's like, it's all just like bright light yellow, right? And orange. What we need now is, instead of doing this guy, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another layer here, and we're going to set this multiply. We're going to tone down your OSL a little bit. We're going to tone it down with this like reddish orange color. All right. So instead of like bright yellow like you've done, instead we want to think about what color that this is not going to like light him up as much as it's going to light up the actual flame itself. We have to tone him back in order to let the flame be more intense. Okay. So that means all these like transition areas, you need more of this orange in here to make it feel more like a natural, like kind of flame color. Okay. Unless you're talking about like metallics, where metallics will reflect the actual flame itself. In other more natural materials, you're going to get more of this like orangish tone. Okay. So now you can see like his face is too bright. So let's tone this stuff down. Right. This is all way too intense. One thing you can do is you can like use the airbrush to apply like a filter of this orange over top of what you've already done. And then, yeah, we should probably get some like orange and down in these areas. Okay. Now light does have fall off, but we want to make sure we get this. Also, this reflection makes no sense. It should be like bright yellow. Right? Because if that's the reflection of the flame right here, it should look like the flame reflection. Okay, so by pushing down more to this orange tone, it makes it feel more like a flame. And then even then, right, we can tone this back a little further to like this slightly reddish color. Okay. Reddish. It's still like on the orange side. Okay. Now what happens here when we do this is that because I've darkened that side, the other side looks really bright in comparison. Okay. But because we don't have that much room to go, we have to take and create another layer and tone down some of the other side. All right. So I'm going to use just like a dark bluish black. And anywhere that's like over here that's in shadow, like tone this back some. All right. So let this just be darker, because this is like the dark side of him that's away from the flame. Okay. So I'm going to make this more of this bluish, dark shadowy blue color. And by increasing the shadows, I push the contrast of the orange lights and they start to appear more intense. Okay. And then everything sort of down here can just come down a little bit. This is another thing you can do with the airbrush. You can like spray this like more shadow color kind of across the surface to just like lower the overall value on the shadow side. You do it in like thin layers, right? You don't want to overdo this. So you build it up gradually until it gets to like the level of darkness that you want. All right, and that's going to make that flame feel more intense. Okay. Even probably just lowering the sword a little bit will help too. So you can see kind of, right? So when we up the flame, right? Then this makes it that flame now start to look more like a flame. This is a 75 millimeter. And then now we add back in the more intense shadows, and that's going to make the OSL feel more intense by comparison. Okay. Thanks, Pedro. Cool. All right. Who's next? Who we got? Richard, you had one in here? Yeah? All right. Let's look at Richard's. Okay. So, obviously, still a work in progress, right? But it seems like you've done quite a bit on the face. Okay. Let's talk about Native American skin tones. Okay. So, hey, thanks for the follow, Pedro. So, Native American skin tones. Now, I don't want this to sound like stereotype or whatever, but the red skin thing is accurate, all right? They do have more reddish tones in their skin. They tend to have this very like red oxide-y slight tone to the shadows of their skin tone. Okay, it tends to be this like more warmish, like rust red kind of color. Okay, and right now yours is kind of just like a bit pale, washed out brown. All right, so if we want to make this more accurate, right, we want to think about adding in some more of these like reddish values into the shadows. Okay, also overall his skin is quite bright right now. They tend to have a bit of a darker skin tone, so you're making your lights too big, and that's washing out his skin tone. All right, so let's reduce the overall light values on the skin. Like we'll apply this more red oxide-y brown red to the skin. Okay. Not margarine, like straight up red oxide. Yeah. Okay. Paints of War, thanks for the prime. Okay. Can you see already the difference? Like, which one feels more natural and Native American to you? Okay. This or this? Yeah. Now, when we move up, right? So like I can bring in a little more of this guy. Okay. Now when we start to move up in the lights, all right, I'll redefine. I'm going to kind of overdo the shadows just to like get back to a bit of a baseline. Okay. So when we start to do some of the lights, now I'm going to start to shift it slightly more of this orangish, more natural skin color. Okay. So here, right? Maybe even more light. Okay, if you use too much white, you start to wash out the skin tones, right? So like try and avoid like pushing to these like light values too fast. Most of what you're seeing in the lights are highlights, right? So those like final lights. Now you have to think about what type of lighting he's in. Is he in the day? Is he in like sunlight? Or is he in, I'm assuming you're going with sunlight because the lights tend to get more yellowish, it looks like. Okay. Okay. Well, I sort of, yeah, so he's in sunlight. So we need to shift to these sorts of golden yellows. Okay. And this is going to look like a lot right now. But you'll see what happens when I start to like really push the light on top of this. Okay, so this is going to look like crazy, weird, saturated, but this is just acting as a transition color into these final highlights. All right, so we're going to shrink some of the highlights, and like here on the forehead, because we're going to go up from here. All right, so something like this, a little on his eye, right? Okay, now we push towards like actually the more whitish values and inside of that. So these highlight spots are going to be much thinner, right? Yours, you have these like, before you had these like big broad highlight areas. We want to shrink those down to where they're significantly smaller in order to make them feel like more intense on the skin. Okay. All right, and then the last thing, so we might need to push the shadows a little more. I'm going to grab this like dark brown here. I'm going to push these shadows just a bit more. And then we're going to come back in with the pure red and kind of add it into some of these areas, that like really red oxide, so that we can intensify the color saturation in the shadows. So right here, right, pushing some of this down. Okay, something like this. And then come over, see how saturated red, like dark red this is? Okay, now in the true, like these really dark shadow areas, I can use some of this like really intense saturated red in the deepest shadow areas. Something like, okay, something like that. Okay, so before, right, and after. Okay, so just, yeah, I mean, one, to like try and look at more reference of these sorts of skin tones, you know. But yeah, they tend to be much darker and more reddish overall. All right. Helpful? Yes. Okay. Hello, Awkwardish Panda. Hi. All right, who's next? Who's next? Okay. Tom. We got Tom working on this elf. Who else we got? Mirage, I think, was the first. So let's go to Mirage right now. So, CW, the spider? I have the spider. No, I haven't gotten to you yet. I will. Okay. So let's go to Mirage. So, this is pretty good. I'm going to guess that this was painted in Arnau's workshop. Or at least some part of it was. I don't know if he's in here to say whether it was or not, but that's what I'm guessing. To be honest, this is like quite good. Okay. There's not. You don't think it was? Looks like it was, but I could be wrong. There is a couple things I think that we could fix. Most of it has to do with there's like one thing on the face and a little bit with the non-metallic. All right. So overall, I think the non-metallic effect is quite nice, but I'm getting this like stripy thing again. Okay. What I mean by the stripy thing is like, let's grab a color that I can paint on top of it that you can see. Okay. We've got 1, 2, 3 highlights that are all the same value. Okay. 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, and then we're doing the same thing here. What's happening right here? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. Right? It's too similar. Okay. We need to spread this stuff out. So you need to try and pick more which one is going to be the more intense of them. Okay. So something like right here, instead of this one, what if we combine this one into one larger reflection? Okay. Instead of like two little lines, right? Same thing here. What if we combine this? Hey, Verda, thanks for the gifted subs, appreciated. Okay, what if instead of this, right? And now we grab some color in between. And also I'd like to see this be like a little more, it's a little too pinky salmony right now for what should be the ground reflection. I would recommend making it slightly more brownish, right? We can now kind of soften this into like this one larger reflection shape. And even tone this back just a little bit. Okay, this will help avoid some of this like overly stripy nature to some of the metallic reflections. Like here, it's like it's so many little lines, right? That it's creating a bit too much noise. Okay, so try and avoid that aspect. Now we can push it back again, right? So I can come back into this like orangish red tone. And I can think like, okay, so the lighting is clearly yellow, right? Based on the hair and everything. So that means if this is reflecting the ground and the ground is more yellow in the lights, like the brighter reflections of the ground need to be more yellow. This is the same problem that Jonas had on the hair of his, right? Where it was like shifting pink instead of the like lights that the ground should be changing to. Okay, so try and also change the reflections of the environmental lights to be more yellowish also. Okay. Now, same thing here. Try and combine some of these. When you do this like non-metallic reflection points, these really bright reflections, one of them needs to be the big one. Okay. So you have one large reflection, and then you have secondary reflections, because the sun isn't going to reflect in this shoulder plate twice. It's going to reflect once, right? So you need to make one of them the dominant reflection, right? You did it on the chest plate here. That makes sense. You have the one bright one, right? And then you've got one bright one here. You wouldn't have a second really intense one. Okay, here, right? You get one bright reflection. That would repeat right there, right? I actually think this line is really nice. This is good, right? You have this one clear, bright reflection. That reflection would probably repeat here. It would also probably repeat like right here. Okay. So that's kind of my biggest feedback on the non-metallic. Hi. Hello, Poland. Okay, my next one is what's happening with the ear. The ear is turning, well, this I don't know what's happening at all. I don't know why it's changing to black, but okay, you're going for something. But the skin, right? We've got this skin tone, and you have these like nice yellowish highlights on the face, but there's no highlights on the ears at all. Like, I understand they're more reddish, but you need some kind of highlight like on the ear. Okay. Right, just to make it match. Should the sky reflection move more round? Reflection on the move more around. I think it's kind of flat, right? It's like you're talking about this reflection right here. It's kind of like going up into this section. And if you're talking about like, should this part be more round? That's sort of a question of whether like, it depends on the shape of these mountains and stuff, because the mountains are gonna distort the reflection a lot. I actually think that it works quite all right. Yeah, so try and bring up the highlight here on the ears. Okay, they need some kind of highlighting. Then on the face, this is too much. Okay, I like this bounce light that you kind of have of the hair and of the chest, but this shadow is too dark for this side. Okay, like let's look here. This is like your shadow tone, and you can see that they're quite close. All right, but that part of her face is technically still in light. So I would recommend, you don't have to go like bright green, bright red like some of the rest, but just increasing the light here a little bit should make this feel a little more natural. I see a lot of people do this where they try and like overshadow the cheekbones, but you have to remember that like this stuff is in light, okay? Like it is facing towards the light, even if it is like starting to curve away from it, it is still in the light. So like overdoing it too much can really like make their face look like sucked in, right? We don't want them to have like this expression. Like fish lips. Bizarre, thank you. Okay, No fish lips. All right, so don't suck in the cheeks too much. Okay, the jawline is a little more rounded than that. All right. Now you can also, this line might be a little too thin right here. Okay, so we can soften this a little bit. And a nice thing to do is you take this highlight here and you can have it like wrap the nostril a little. So this is the shape, right? This is called the nasal labial fold. All right, you can look on me. See? Hi. Right? It curves. Yeah. Okay. So we want it to curve. Okay. It's not a straight line. All right. We can naturally create a bit of this curvature shape, and also depending on how young you want them to look, you can soften it more as it goes away from the face. So here, right, it's gonna like, we're gonna make it start to go away as it gets further away from the nose. So eventually we can kind of connect these two, and what's left is like a smaller fold right there. Okay. Noah, thanks for the tier 1 for 6 months in advance. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. All right. So, you see what I'm kind of saying, right? So it's like we soften that so it's not so, right? Let's look at the difference. See how straight lined that looks before? And then by like kind of connecting, we connect like here and here together across this shape, right? And this becomes more of like this little triangle. Okay. Make sense? I don't think he's here, but he'll see this later. All right, then we can come back in and glaze a little color back in if we want. Also, glaze a little red in the chest. Okay. All right, now real quick, I want to say something about the back. All right, look, what is this? You got this bright highlight right here. Where would this highlight be repeated, guys? Okay. If you've got this like bright, intense bluish highlight right there on this shape, it should be like right here, right? That needs to repeat in areas where it makes sense that it would show up again. So here on these edges, right? So it would show up like here. It would show up like there, here. Probably like right there. Okay. You sort of did it over here where you started to like have it wrap around, right? Okay, so these need to like, these top edges, if they're reflecting the sky, need to like wrap around this back side, okay? So it doesn't make sense for the things above to be reflecting the ground, right? The ground is like that reddish one. And then here you've sort of done it, okay? But down here on this part, this whole thing should probably be like blue. Okay, something like that. Right? Dabu. Dabu. Thanks for the follow. Okay, so the difference, right? So we need to make, before it's like these, the back rondelles, like, they stand out like on their own. They're the only thing that has that level of reflection. By putting these reflections in, it makes them more consistent with the back. Okay. Hey, thank you, Dabu. Appreciate it. And real quick, just so it doesn't think I just forgot, right? This whole top edge would be more bluish. Probably some of these little rivets would reflect little bits of blue on them too. Beep, beep, beep. Okay. All right. And then here's more of that thing I was talking about where you got like two reflections that are the exact same, right? Like this and this. Try and make those separated, right? Make them two individual or like they need to have some sort of something that distinguishes them. All right. Let me see. Nope, this is not what. Kilo to Bravo. Hello, welcome. All right, who's next? Who we got next? Socaster. All right, before I even put this one up, I have to do a slight edit to this photo before we can show this one on stream. Let me just paint something in real fast. We're doing the opposite of free the nipple. We're hiding it. All right. So we got this lady, the Brahm witch. Okay. Well, I think it's going pretty well. Man, those horns are intense yellow. Is Socaster in here? So one thing I would ask right now is that, like, I'm not sure if the horns are supposed to be gold or not. They look kind of goldish. But I'm not positive. I think the skin tone is pretty good, but it's also sort of blown out. Okay. So kind of similar, like the facial skin tones feel a little more natural to me than the body skin tones. Okay, so what I would recommend is just filter, similar like how I talked about with Richards. I would, the chief or whatever, would be to like just filter some color back in here, all right? Because we kind of lost a little bit, right? So this will help sort of bring some of that skin tone back. Now we can use this white, but that white is like a highlight, okay? So we need to reserve that white for just areas that would be like really intense. Okay, so bringing back some color. Yeah. And this could be just because the photo is overexposed, but based on the red, I think the skin is like, you kind of went overboard on the highlighting, right? Also, we want to pull more focus towards the face. So by reducing the light on the lower portion of the figure, we're going to it's going to create more light on top and draw more attention upwards, okay? So let's reduce this all down. right? Something like this. Okay. You can see just how like pure white that is, right? So let's grab like a little bit of this color in between. We can reduce this down a little bit and save those like pure white highlights for like a little bit smaller, you know? Now, I think the light placement itself is actually pretty good. So I don't have too much to say about that. I think it was just like kind of just sort of overdid it. Now, on the stomach itself, right? Like right here, okay? This is an area where you can like add in some of those, like now that I've kind of done it, overdone it, like this is a area where you can like bring that highlight back, right? But it doesn't have to be like huge. Okay. The highlight on the chest. These stomach highlights are actually quite nice. I like the separation here. Okay. Now, if you're going for like a pale skin tone, like this is a theoretical question. If you were going for a pale skin tone, doesn't just mean using pure white, okay? If you want a pale skin tone look, just desaturate the skin a little more, right? Use a little more of that like purplish color instead of just like blowing out the whites, all right? Okay, my other thing would be, if this is supposed to be metallic, right? Which I think it might be based on sort of the shape. I would recommend trying to introduce some of these like these little bits of like secondary reflections here, okay? So try and add some like some further interest here in the metallics just to create some like additional information. Right? So that might mean that we've got to like tone some of this back a little. In order to create like more of these secondaries. Right, something along those lines. Because like I like using my Red Bull can. You can see just how many lines are like on the can, right? There's like a ton of information in that reflection, right? So unless you're in a white room, there's going to be some like other things in the environment that'll create like lines and stripes and things in these cylindrical shape reflections. All right. The fabric itself, I don't have too much to say. And this is a little too low res for me to talk about like the shape of the hair reflections, but I feel like I could be a little sharper just based on sort of what I'm seeing here. They look like a little too like flat. Okay, so try and like sharpen those, taper those a little more. The teeth are nice. I like the face. Some of this stuff is maybe getting a little lost, like her necklace. And I don't quite know what's going on here, but let's talk about like just this edge. Try and define her robe edge a little bit more. Okay. In fact, I think you could actually like reduce the light on the lower part of the robe a little bit just to, again, pull more attention to her face. One of the problems with this figure is she has no eyes. Like her eyes are covered. So because of that, you lose like some of the focus on the face. All right. So here we can try and push the light like a little bit more. Just right here. Don't go too white because you're gonna lose, like, it's gonna start to look too salmony or whatever. It'll start turning too pink. So you can kind of overdo it and then come back with like more pure reddish orange, whatever, and kind of like glaze the color back in to like restore some of that saturation. Okay. So yep. Like before, right? It was just like the skin is so blown out, and then after, and we've kind of like shifted the focus. Okay. We want to shift the focus towards her face. Okay, who else we got? Boone Shepherd. And well, sorry, dude, I'm not good with these Polish names. All right, so let's look at this one. Welcome, see you later. All right, one thing, let me make an adjustment real quick. On your photographs, like, this is, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. How do I adjust curve? Let's just bring it down a little bit. This is like, there we go. That helps a little. Okay. Kind of like overexposed. So let's just try and tone this down just a touch so we can kind of see what's going on a little better. All right. That helps a bit. Okay. So seems like these are gaming figures. I think they're looking pretty nice. I think there's a I like the water on the lizard. I like kind of colors, but you're getting a little bit of what I call the Tron effect. All right. So the Tron effect is what happens when you focus too much on edge highlights. All right. So here you've like done the edge highlights around the cape, and it's like, and it looks like they're wearing the suits from Tron, right? Where it's like they're so intensely bright compared to the other surroundings that they look like they have like light suits. Okay, so don't overdo it with the try not to overdo it with the edge highlights. The second thing, right? You can instead of like near pure white kind of thing, right? Like use like a brownish, right? Like this is fine. This still defines the edge, but it doesn't like blow it out, right? Okay. That's still enough. All right. So the next thing, if you want to really start pushing the definition, is you want to create definition between areas. So you're focused on like highlighting the raised edges right now instead of focusing on the volume, right? So where would there be, if the light is from above, where would the most light on his chest be? Okay. Anyone? Yeah, top of the pecs. Okay, so that means that we need to create way more light on top, right? So that means the most amount of light will actually be at the top here, okay? So let's push the light there, right? But I leave that black line that separates the chest from the neck collar thing, right? The gorget. We're getting back. Call back to Wednesday's stream. The gorget. Gorget. Okay, so you're gonna have the most amount of light on top, right? same thing here, right? His stomach, right? You're going to have more light on top of the stomach, and then the rib cage and pecs are going to create a shadow. Okay, so I'm going to push the light more above, right? And then I want to create this definition using like the dark lines. Okay, that means that this now, you've done this like really bright part. This part of the chest, this would be slightly darker, okay? Maybe not that dark. I'm just toning it back for a second so we can get an idea. Okay, but maybe this like medium green. All right, we can tone that down. And then the shadows are still well defined, but we've given like shape and volume to the chest and moved the light position up to where kind of it should be, right? And then here, right, we can redefine the pectoral. Okay, something like that. So the same thing here, right? It's like there are these little folds, but we need to get the overall shape of his stomach first, right? It's always about the overall shape. So his torso is a cylinder and his stomach is slightly spherical, right? So we want to get the overall shape and impression in first, and then you push the light on top. Right, so now we can push this light at the top a little more, and then you can like define these folds a little bit. So it's like here he's got these little folds that kind of connect towards as the like fabric or whatever stretches towards the center of his stomach. Right, and then you can glaze it back down, restore the color here, right? And if we need, we can take one last little level of highlighting and maybe shift it slightly more green, like yellowish, right? And we can put in these like final little oops, you know, these little bings, these little highlights, these little final pops, you know? Okay. So see let's look at the difference, right? I'm not focused on the raised edges, I'm focused on pushing the light into the volumes, right? So hopefully you should be able to see the difference in the chest. Now, I'm not going to sit here and like repaint over the whole figure, but that should give you an idea of like how to handle more rendering these volumes. Okay, just make sure that you push this light here next to this one, and then you have to have this like this dark line, right? This dark line is what's going to create that separation and definition. Okay. Cool. Makes sense, I hope. All right. Let's see. Find out who's next. Trying to get through everyone. One Shepherd, we got you. Got this Kingdom Death Lady, and we got one more. All right. All right. So we're gonna cut it off there for this week, but well, not here, but the ones that are currently in the Discord. So we got 3 more, and then we're gonna cut it. But then in 2 weeks or whatever, when we do this again, we will have more peoples to talk about. All right. So let me get these last few. Wait, this is a rough picture, but I will do my best. And then this one. All right. So those are going to be our final 3. So let's see. All right, let's look at this guy, or this lady, this wonderful sculpt from Maxime Pinot, who it happens to be his birthday. I guess it's no longer his birthday in France, but it was his birthday today. Sculpted by Maxime Pinot. Hi, Dan. So, I like what you got going on. The Rembrandt's cool. The colors are cool. The leather is quite well done. I like the micro texture and stuff in the leather. This is working out pretty well. Some of this leather here, the red leather parts, might be a little over highlighted. It might be just a touch too much. The hair looks quite nice. All right, so let's see. Before, I don't like putting the Discord up on stream, so let me just check out one of the side views real quick. Yeah, all right. So let's look at the side view also. So I think this is cool. This might be, I get you're trying to do these the zones of the face thing here, right? Where it's a little more bluish. It's maybe a little much. It might be a touch too much for female skin tone. Okay. So I would try and avoid going too gray here. All right, you can make it slightly more gray, but you don't want to overdo it on ladies, right? So bring a little bit of that color back. All right, you don't want her to look like she's got 5 o'clock shadow. Okay. Then the same sort of deal that we were dealing with before is this is still technically part of the light. So we can give her a little more light on her jaw, right? And this is going to define the cheekbone a little bit more. Okay, so something like this. It's this shape, right? Okay, something like that. So one, don't overdo the gray, and to try and introduce a little bit of light there on the side. Okay, now let's look at the front. All right, let's go back to the front. The next thing is you've got this thing going on. You got this arch deal. I know that these are quite sculpted. Okay, the sculpt of the brow is quite heavy with the shape of the the round part of the skull. Anyway, so try and avoid overdoing that. Okay, you need to think that there's a bone in the forehead that the brow ridge, right? You have, let me change to a color you guys can see. Okay, right, so you have the skull like this, right? And then you have the temples here, right? And then there's these this bone shape like this, and these muscles in the forehead, okay? What's happening is you're trying to highlight this raised surface, and it's creating this super sharp brow ridge. All right, so I would recommend that we kind of reduce that a little and try and bring the light up a little higher. So what I would do, okay, let me just grab this mid-tone. We're gonna like tone this back, okay? All right, something like that. We soften this out, okay? Then you've got your highlight here. You're gonna have this like shape right here, okay? And this is where the light would really hit on the brow, all right? So I'm gonna overdo it, and then you get these like spherical shapes like this, okay? Something like that. Now, if this highlight was off center here, yes, you would get a highlight like this, but it's not centered that way. You have it more like directly in the middle. Okay. So I'm really overdoing the light at the moment just to show like where I would place the lights. And then we can like soften these back together. So it's like tone this back, and then start to like blend this in to the shape. Okay. Right, something like that. Okay, so now the difference between this, where she's like, it's like too far out to the sides, it's like overdoing. Let me show you on camera. This camera, right? You're like overdoing these parts here, like this, right? You can see on me where the top 1, 2 highlights are, right? One here. Okay. So it's the same general idea, right? Don't try and highlight the raised surfaces. The next thing that'll help a lot is like giving her eyebrows. That'll help make this feel a little bit more natural. Let's just draw them in real quick just to see like what it looks like. Okay, so it makes the forehead not look so sharp. As far as the Cupid's bow, this thing, right? Like the light hits like one side, okay, and then try and soften the edge highlight a little, right? So it's not quite so overly sharp. Okay, something like that. Don't need to go quite this dark in here either. Try and use a color like this, right? Something like that. I would also recommend a little to try and connect these together a little better. Okay, so the shadows here, like try and get that shadow connected a little bit more. And you can see just how dark and gray this side here is, like from this view, right? So let's just put it in just so you can see like what it would look like. Right. Something just like that. As far as like the shirt and stuff, I don't really have much to say. I see you're also trying to do this kind of like orangish light coming from behind. Like I would have it wrap a little bit more just to, like, if you're going to use it, right? Like don't be a coward, you know? Like if you're gonna do it or don't do it. Okay. So put it in if you're gonna put it in. Yeah, the leather and stuff is really good. The skin is quite nice, right? Like I like the tonality. The shapes are quite good. You have a slightly above right light scheme here, so on the lower eyelids you can reduce the shadow slightly on the right side. Okay, this also could be slightly softer. I see you sort of did it on this one, but you could do it a little bit on the other one also. This highlight's really good. And then, yeah, this is nice where you like wrapped it up around the nostril a little bit. With the light being in slightly from the side, I think maybe you could actually on this one shift this highlight slightly this direction. It depends on what you want your main view to be. Like here, I don't have the main view super clear if she's supposed to be like dead on or not. Like if you want her to be viewed from like straight forward. But highlights are interesting in that they change depending on the angle, right? So based on the hair highlights you've placed, I would actually shift the highlight over slightly. And then you can like reduce this one just a touch, right? Well, yeah, Roshana, it depends on the viewing angle also a lot where the highlight's placed. So I think probably the best viewing angle for her is somewhere that's like in between these two. So it's like obviously this is way too much, but like this is probably too far, like too dead on, like straight on. So I think like the optimal angle would be something like slightly turned from this. Okay, so cool. All right, next one. Hope that was helpful. Kingdom Death Lady. Okay, I think this is going well. My big tip for you, and I saw one of the other pictures. So let me pull up one of the pictures where I can see her shield. That one's kind of blurry though. Yeah, I can see her shield here. Okay. So let's look. So I think my biggest tip for you is like it's going well, but we need to work on separation more and painting thinner. Okay. So the biggest thing is just like when you're dealing with these like small miniatures, right? These like 32 millimeter miniatures, sharpness is definitely a thing. So like try and really like define these edges and like paint lines, right? Especially on stuff like this shield, right? We need to like push contrast more so that these little straps are like nice and clear. Hello, Marky Mark and Kilo to Bravo. I think I missed. I'm sorry if I missed you. So let's try and like increase this edge definition, okay? What's also going to help is like not just edge highlights, right? These are like, we're doing edge lights here, right? We want to also try and do some more shadows. So grabbing this darker brown and like trying to paint these nice lines that really like separate these elements, okay? Readability is the most important thing about 32 millimeter models. All right. So the way we increase readability is through like definition of elements. Okay. And what's going to do that is pushing the contrast here, and not pushing contrast in terms of like total value contrast, but contrast between light and shadows and like clearly defined separation. Okay. So you can see the sort of part I did, and then the right side of the shield starts to get a little blurrier, but like the overall, if we look at it really small on screen, like the overall definition of the shield has gotten stronger, right? Okay, so that's my biggest thing for you is one, just like getting cleaner at painting edge at these like dark lines and edge highlights, and that's going to help a lot. Now the next thing you can do is you can start to introduce some like color variation. Okay, and what I mean by that is like, instead of just let's make a layer like this. Instead of just like doing the shield all one thing, like pick some of these straps, right? And you can use like contrast paint or an ink or something, and we can add some variety, like color variety to these straps, and this will help create even more like definition and help draw some of these out, right? So maybe these three major ones are kind of like more brownish, right? And then you can play around with this, and this will help also create more separation and definition in there. So we have the are you on the Discord? Jay Rivisk. If you're on the Discord, you need to link your Twitch profile to your Discord profile, and then you'll get access to the Feedback Fridays channel. Okay? All right, so that's the big things for me right there. And you can see this a lot from this other angle, is like, right, there's nothing separating this rope right now from this bone. So like by changing the rope to more brownish rope, right, it instantly creates like material contrast. Okay, so just think about like, how can I separate these materials from each other, right? Yeah, and then like for non-metallics and stuff, man, this is just like a practice in painting like thinner lines. Use the edge of the brush, like try, like you're not always going to be able to use the edge, but like this just comes down to sheer volume of practice, like of painting edges, like, because your light placement and stuff I think is pretty nice, but it's like here in the straps, right? It's just, you need to like come in and like define these more, you know, make sure there's like nice dark separation between certain like elements where you can, right? Because all of this definition is just going to help like make things more readable. Okay, like on this belt, right, there's no, we got to come in and like clean this line up, right? Clean this line up. Okay, so just take a little extra time and try and like really separate out things where you can. What kind of brushes are you using? Question for you. Any particular brush? Getting a good brush will also make this less of a nightmare. Okay. Like it'd be very difficult to like pull some of this stuff off. Okay. Like a size 1 or something? Or are you using like a super tiny one? Because the fur I think is pretty cool. Like this looks nice. Like the placement of the lights and stuff. Like it looks soft and I dig that. It's just like, yeah, some of the line sharpness is lacking. Number 3. I mean, a number 3 and a number 0. Yeah, that's good sizes. Yeah, I think this is just sheer practice time, you know? One thing I would recommend, do you like Space Marines at all? Like, do you find them interesting at all? Because Space Marines are like really good practice for doing this sort of thing. I'm not a huge fan of the heavy metal style of painting, but it is really good practice to try and attempt a really clean heavy metal style paint job, because it will teach you how to paint like those thin edge highlights and stuff. And it'll help you work on your like control a lot more. So maybe try doing one, because then you don't have to worry about like blending and volumes and stuff as much. It's more just like practicing, like doing thin crisp lines. And sometimes what happens is you go to do this line, right? So let's say you're doing this line. Okay, we're going to do a line here. And I want to paint, oh no, I painted it like way too big, right? That black line is way too big. So what I do is I grab the color that I used before, and I come back and I just paint in the larger area where I have more room, right? And I just thin that line out by erasing the black line, right? And now I've created a nice thin line instead. Okay. I hope that makes sense. I hope that was helpful. On to the last one. Last one for tonight, anyways. All right. This one's cool. I like what we're doing. I like the figure. Metallics are looking pretty neat. Two big things. Okay. One is some of the tones here in the face, the blending in the face could be a little better. You're getting a little chunky, so try and just like soften some of these elements where you can. Okay. Second thing, connect this, right? This should be connected. Right? So let's connect like that. Let's bring some light over here. Okay. I think your transition to shadows is maybe a little too abrupt here, so let's try and soften that a little bit. This I like. This I like. For your lighting direction, you're maybe slightly too dark in this area. So like something like this, be a little more natural. Yeah, like in the ear, you can see a bit of this like chunkiness to it. So just work on cleaning some of this stuff up a little. But yeah, so that's cool for that, right? Same with here. It's like this is just getting a little too rough. Okay, so come back with thinner layers and just try and like soften this out a little bit. Now for the chest, okay, this is interesting. In fact, we talked about some of this literally on the last stream. Where I was doing the Black Knight, right? So we want to think about this chest as a shape, right? We're trying to do these like metallic-y style scales. So if this chest, assuming this is the main viewing angle, right? It's probably not quite like this. It's probably slightly turned. Where would if his chest was metallic, where would it go? Something like here, right? So it's like the brightest highlight would be like here. Okay. So I'm going to draw, I'm actually going to make that on another layer. Something like this. So I want the most concentrated part of the light scales to be right there. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this layer and I'm going to grab this color here. And I'm going to start like painting in these scales. Boom, boom, boom. Anything that's in this circle, right, is going to get nice and bright. Okay, and then as I start, let's turn this off now. So you can see that I've like done that circle, right? And as I start to leave that circle, now is when I can start to tone this down some. So instead I'll do something like this, right? So now we'll start to like fade these out. So as I leave that main circle, okay? Because we need to think about the scales as an overall volume first. That's really important, is that it's a larger volume before it's these small individual ones. Okay? Now in the middle of this, I'm going to come even bright. I need to like really make these shiny. Okay, so a few of them right in the center, right, get really intensely bright. Something like that. So now we've got like a kind of light and overall shape to it. Okay. Then you start to do stuff like where you've been doing this, where you have these like irregular out of place scales. Okay. So like maybe this scale right here happens to just be like a little out of position and it just happens to hit the light. Okay. So these are fun in that they like you can play around with this scale mail stuff and like, oh, this one scale is like out of orientation to the rest of them and it creates this effect. Okay. Then you come in and you can like bloom out this a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll actually reduce some of the shadows in the light so they're not as black. Something like that. And then probably most of these like upper ones should just be like a little bit brighter. Then comes the extremely long and tedious process of, okay, this scale, right? And then we have to come in and like, time to paint edges. Hundreds and hundreds of little edge reflections on the scales that are facing the main view. All right. And it's very fun and it takes forever, but it really does like add to the effect when it's completed. I'm not going to do all of them, but I'm going to do some just to like, so you can see sort of the effect that it makes when they have the edges applied. Right, and then some of them you can even like push the light like up into the corner a little. So maybe like the light hits right there. So they're not just all like flat. Okay, but the overall effect, right, makes it much like shinier and more iridescent, yeah? Now, lastly, let's come into the face and like you can use a little of that bluish light that you're kind of using in the this like ice blue sort of colors that you're using in the scales as like a highlight on the face, okay? So it's like after you apply that sort of mid-tone, like that slight skin tone color, you can come back and like push some highlights in. Okay, that blue tone like works with your kind of like ambience that you have. And it makes them read like really well together. Okay. So those like blue final highlights, right? You can do them on the hair too. Like you basically use this ice blue, this icy blue as your gray, as your white, right? Instead of pure white, you use this like ice blue as your pure white. Right? It'll create a nice like cold, gloomy effect to the sort of colors, especially like you said, if you're going for that Vigo look from League, right? He's got that like slightly undead, ghosty vibe to him, right? So something like that. Okay. And then yeah, then feel free to come back with some of this like slightly reddish tone, and where you need it, like in the ears or whatever, like you can put some of that back in the shadows and like around some of the facial features, to like if you're worried about him losing some of that skin tone, right? With the red on the lower reflection of the blades, would you put red on the edges of some of the lower scales? Yeah, you could. I also don't know if I would go with the red on the lower part of the blade. I might consider, like, if you're trying to maintain this, like, cool ambience, I would consider, like, getting rid of it. Or maybe even, like, making it just, like, a neutral gray instead. You know? Stick with the kind of cold scheme. Cool? All right. Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for this Feedback Friday. I appreciate everyone who submitted, everyone who subscribed. Paris, I will get to yours next time. I'll talk about it real quick. I'm not going to draw over it, but let's just look at it and just kind of just like, what can I discuss? Okay, so biggest thing, right? You're treating every surface the same, right? So the metallics and the cloth and everything have the same level of reflectivity and light to them. You have to consider the material, like the material finish. Okay, this is going to help you a lot when doing this sorts of effects. Is like what's the natural brightness of something is, right? So look at me, right? My shirt is darker than this part of my shirt, This is like this is darker than my skin, right? My skin is lighter than my gray shirt. Okay, this can, I always bring in the can, is more reflective, right? So consider the material, what sort of material it is, and different materials are going to reflect light differently. They're all going to have like a naturally higher or darker value than other materials. So right now, right, if we go back to look at the picture, everything on the back is treated the same, right? Where on the front, it's clear that like he's got pink, white, and pink, okay? So on the back, right, we got to think about what happens to pink, right? When the pink layers get hit by yellow light, they're going to turn slightly more orangish. But the white layers are going to be still mostly white, but like very light yellowish, right? So you'll have more like orange and white, like orangish and light yellow bands instead, okay? And you know how to paint non-metallic, just use the yellows instead, right? All right. So, yeah. Let's go back. Okay. Thanks for everyone for hanging out. Appreciate it. Going to search for someone to trade.